Work session, 5:30.
Yeah, I do too. That's kind of how I am. How are you, Sherry?
I'm good, how are you?
Good. Already almost.
Glad to be here, right? I don't know where it is, maybe close. I know. Heading into the middle.
That's what I was thinking. It's like, where did it go? I just goes by in a blur.
I know.
I do.
Hi there, how you doing?
More of a curiosity. I'm here to see what the survey said. Oh,
The survey said.
so is there a chair I can pull?
You can come up here and sit by us.
No, I'm not a board member. Can't do that.
I'm not either. I'm just here for moral support.
I'm waiting on yours. Brian, sorry. It's gonna lie. The old one? Sure. And one more. No, one of the old ones. What was in the big box? By the way, for some reason, I have a meeting at 7:30.
I don't miss it. I can't even remember.
Then I'm gone.
That's good.
I have one iPad on my desk.
Yeah, this one.
So whenever you.
No,
If I don't have anything, then I go.
Very quiet.
Yeah, good job. Oh, you're power. Are you gonna wait? For your iPad, you're gonna wait until we can transfer it? Okay. I don't go on Monday through Saturday.
That was good.
County.
Oh, yeah, there's too many people, but still got an animal Brian.
Logan, they were with friends. He her husband and Logan, Ryan and his wife were in South River. Spencer's down to Cedar. It's like, I like this empty nest.
It goes quickly. But I had meetings with the
Hi everyone, howdy howdy.
Hey,
How
how are
are
you?
you?
I'm surprised we got you out of California today.
Oh,
That's the best time of the year to go to Disney World.
I wish. A lot warmer there, I'm sure.
Yeah, California.
That's true, there are fires there.
so it's extra warm.
Yeah, true. Well, welcome everyone tonight. We want a special welcome to Stephanie, our new board member, okay, and Neil, our new business
Welcome.
administrator. Yes, thank you.
Now,
Too many things on this little brain tonight.
When I left the house, I told Ken, I am not going to say anything tonight. He's like, good luck with that.
But we're thrilled to have you both on board, so thank you so much, and thrilled to have the rest of you here on this cold January night.
You ready? What we're doing is
Yeah.
if you don't mind, we'll get started. Brian and Danielle are not here yet, but we feel like we've got a really full agenda, so I'm probably going to talk fast on my little portion. We have had behavior coaches the last 2 years in these schools that you see right there, correct?
Not
Three.
Garland,
Yeah.
yeah, the Title I school.
And
Say that again?
we've had behavior coaches at
Behavior coaches.
3 of those 4 schools. And it just hasn't really worked like we hoped it would to help with behaviors. And we've had, I'll just say it, we've had some resistance from teachers to have other coaches who were teachers tell them, really how to help their kids. So what we're proposing, and we just wanted to let you know this is what we'd like to do, is we're going to reduce and force those positions, put them back in the classroom, and then we'd like to have elementary interns. And the interns are paid a teacher's salary, and so overall, because Garland's so big, we'd like to add an intern there, and it's worked so well at
Golden Spike.
Golden Spike. Our last two principals have come from Golden Spike as the interns, and we just feel like this is one of the best ways we can grow our own and really help our principals with as many things as they need to do. A principal alone is really, it's hard because you have to do IEPs, you have to do all the discipline, you have to do all the evaluations, and it's just gotten so big, especially with the discipline. I think that's, and IEPs and 504s have even grown.
Like Jake has 220 IEPs a year, and most of those take an hour or two, so that's 2 to 3 hours every day on a 180-day contract, and then the number of students and the way that behaviors are increasing. They'll just be on teacher salary. One of the other things that we've really struggled with in elementary is we have so much turnover in the elementary administration that they're not getting trained and experienced before they come in and run a building by themselves. And so a lot of the things that they need to know and have shown to them in practice, there's not an opportunity in elementary for them to get that. Whereas in secondary, you've probably been an assistant principal before you become a principal, and we just kind of throw them into the deep end. So for teacher salary and the replacement of the behavior coaches were limited in that they can't discipline students, they couldn't attend IEPs. We feel like replacing with this teacher salary, it's the same cost, would allow us to then support the principal in all ways and leave an administrator in the building when they have meetings. And Title I principals have more meetings than the other principals have by requirement of the state, but they also have more behavior problems, which leaves the school without support. The reason for Garland is more students, but also a lot higher proportion of provisional teachers that need to be observed, evaluated, and mentored. So.
And a year ago, I don't know if it was a year ago, but it was last school year, we did a riff of some kindergarten paras, and it caused a little bit of an uproar, and I had to come back from behind and tell you, so we wanted to tell you up front that these behavior coaches, and some of them do have administrative degrees.
They're working on them.
All
three are working.
And we're not saying they'll get the jobs, but there is a chance they will.
How soon are you planning? Like, is this for fall?
It'll be for the fall.
And I will be going around and talking to the behavior coaches tomorrow and letting them know we're switching directions. The posting will be put open for the interns, because then we can get a list of where do you want to go and what position would you like. By contract, they're provisional up to 3 years. It's a trial basis on any position, and so it's been a trial basis, and we can send them back to the classroom in the first 3 years if it wasn't effective. And
So Heidi Jo, were the coaches, behavior coaches, were they full-time behavior coaches?
Yeah.
plus 10 days, yeah, but the 10 days is additional.
So they were teachers and behavior coaches, they were just full-time?
And the other thing why it's not as helpful as we'd like it to be too is there is a literacy coach and a math coach in the building, and they were coaching just on how to respond to the behaviors of the students and classroom management and things like that. Teachers tend to be more resistant on feedback on those types of things. So having a principal be the one that says this is what the expectation is for behaviors. Some of their reporting is how difficult it is to be in that position to try to get teachers to adhere to what expectations are and policy changes. And then, yeah, a principal is out of the building, they can't suspend a student, because they're not an administrator, so it will allow them.
Interns could?
Yeah, the interns can. Those coaches also can do IEPs, interns can. They're administrators on the teacher salary, and it gives you a chance to try them out, give support to the principal, give support to the teachers, and pay them a teacher salary before you commit to them being an administrator on administrator salary. It gives them a chance to get trained and learn the job and decide if they really want it.
And we've got a protocol of how we handle the interns if they get in and really don't pan out, or if they've had a chance to interview, then we've got an understanding that within 3 years they could go back to the classroom. So we tried to make sure we cover that. So.
Did you have a question, Stephanie?
Yeah, I just was wondering, so what's the difference between this intern versus a vice principal? Like, it varies the pay?
They'll do all the same exact responsibilities, they just won't. Typically when we look to vice principals or assistant principals, we're starting them out even in secondary as interns, and after they've proven themselves, they can get a vice principal or an assistant principal position. And so there's no difference. They can do everything a vice principal or assistant principal can do because they have the administrative degree. It just would cost us quite a bit more to have assistant principals in elementary.
I think this is a wonderful idea because I really think that if an individual has a mentor before, to kind of see how it all works, they're a much better principal once they're in that position. I remember back in the day, I was the very last one, but they used to go to Snowville, Park Valley,
Oh, interesting.
Howell, where they would do first, and then you would come into town to a school. I was the very last one. I remember Richard Kimber said I had choice of those 3 schools. Well, I picked Howell because I could actually drive there and come home every night. But there, people literally, I remember Jim Beatty lived in a trailer out in Park Valley. So, you know, this is a great thing. I think it prepares them and gets them ready.
Things that really, thank you, I'm looking forward to that, so that as we do have turnover, we have people who have been trained instead of, you know, 4 principals in 4 years at North Park, and they've all been new, without any experience. Shaylin was the last one, and she had 1 year of experience at Garland, Wendy had a year at Century, and then the last 2 have been brand new. So
And
that's
another-
hard on
yeah,
the school.
I
and
agree,
They don't come
I
with
agree.
experience.
And another good thing, I think that you may get a person in there that goes, I don't really like this. I thought I would, but I don't really like this. I'd rather stay a teacher or do something different.
And they go right back.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
I remember when we did the bond focus groups, and they were saying, you know, you can't find a principal in an elementary building. In secondary, if there's 2 or 3 and one of them has to go to a meeting, the others are still there. This will help with some of that too, so that it doesn't feel like the secretary or a coach or a counselor has to take over when the principal is gone in those 4 schools that are highest need. So, also, maybe with having interns in these other buildings, I know this is something Danielle's brought up before, maybe that it won't be that we have an intern at Golden Spike, but then the next year they have a new intern and a new intern, because we always need to take Golden Spike's intern, you know.
There's a lot of stress on that big of a school.
It is a
Yeah.
lot, and, yeah.
It really
I mean,
helps.
maybe at some point Golden Spike maybe needs an assistant principal as we can get some
Yeah.
interns that are more trained, so
Don't
it
look at
does
me,
stay
look
consistent.
down at the money guy.
I'm just, I'm not throwing that out there, that's not the time, but I'm okay.
It's just money. Okay, thanks Heidi Jo, and thank you, board. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, of these schools, how many of them are the Title I schools?
All except for Garland. Garland's the one that the last few years has had quite a percentage of provisional teachers, but they also used to be almost 800 students. Now they're 675 to 700. They also have an ED program and 2 functional skills programs that were both added in the last year that brings up their IEP numbers, and it makes it so that school is the next one that needs the support.
Are these Title I targeted school-wide schools?
They are all 3 school-wide.
The 3 except for Garland, right?
Yeah, Garland's not Title I.
And are there any other Title I schools in the district? Just those two. Okay.
Okay.
We do grade bands, so only elementary qualifies, and we only have those 3 right now.
Okay, with that, what we plan on the bulk of tonight's meeting, and just remember, we've got a couple things, but we want to make sure we get this covered. And we are going to talk about this in the open board meeting, but we felt like it'd be nice to have a more in-depth conversation here, is the bond survey results. And so Heidi Jo has been the master of the fingers and the brains, Keith's help, and I have been along for the ride. So we put a lot of work in. Heidi Jo, let's go ahead and start this. Go ahead, and I'll let you explain it.
Okay, so I know you all know this, but we just send it out to everybody we could get it to, ask people to put it on Facebook, let's see what kind of response we can get. They say usually if you can get 50% representation, that's pretty good. So we had 3,294 survey participants. In our district, we have 6,919 families by our address counts. And we have 1,761 employees based off of the bonuses that we gave in November. Right, that was November before Christmas, so, whoops. And then this is just the numbers, so you could be in multiple areas. We wanted to be able to break the data down. For this purpose, I didn't break it down by what did parents say or what did these schools say, but I thought we would just introduce it tonight. If you had questions about some of those things, I can dig into the demographics of each percentage if you email me. So Okay, so this is just the city representation of participants. You'll notice, oh, is it frozen? You'll notice that at the end, non-resident employees is also shown here. So when we get to I did not vote, it's the employees in our district that are telling us what they think about the bond without voting on the bond. Still not going.
I like that, anyway, you'll see that, Tremont and Brigham City, our largest cities, seem to be the ones that responded the most. We do have lots of outliers as well, so.
These are the characteristics of the participants, which you all saw this probably from having it sent to you earlier. Again, you can be multiple things. You could be a parent and a grandparent and an employee of the district like Jerry Jackman. So you could have answered in multiple areas.
What are the two biggest ones? That's kind of small.
The resident of Box Elder and a parent, and then homeowner, yeah, are the three biggest.
What's that purple one up there? Is that the resident?
Yeah, that's resident.
Okay.
On my, I had to look because on my screen it's blue, but
It's purple, isn't it? Okay.
it looks very blue up there a little bit.
I've worked around Keith, I've started to question my color.
Oh, I'm going back the wrong way. Okay. And this is just how did you vote on the bond so that we could get an idea of was this pretty representative of how the towns voted. Overall, the bond came back at 32% support, so more people that participated in giving us feedback were for the bond than what was the fair representation. And again, the employees out of district, they just didn't vote. This was the question where we wanted to know how did you feel about the amount, the tax increase? And so the blue portion up here, 37%, felt like it was manageable, and they're the ones that voted yes. The red portion said, I voted no because 220 million was too much for you to ask for at one time, and not necessarily just the tax increase, right? And then the yellow is the people that just said the overall economic situation is why I voted no. Just really in general, it didn't have to do with the proposal, it more had to do with not a good time to be asking for money. On the next few questions, we said, please tell us which of the priorities you supported and those that you did not as part of the bond proposal. Something I had to think about after a lot of time of looking at it was the neutral parties. Like if they're neutral, we can't just look at just yes and no. We almost have to divide the neutral and say you could have won them over one way or the other. Having a low percentage of yes, if we had a high percentage of neutral, doesn't mean that we couldn't have gotten people to that, or they just didn't care. It wasn't a reason for them to say no. It's sort of something I had to think about. I'll say more about that later. But it's funny because more people were concerned about the middle schools being unsafe than the elementary schools. So on the elementary school end, they're just a couple percentage lower. But so 64% felt like the schools being unsafe, the middle schools, was a reason to vote yes. And only 62% in elementary.
And so when you say that neutral, because when I was looking through this, I'm like, there's a lot of neutrals. Is this people that just don't care?
Yeah.
Or was it just, that's what I was concerned, I was wondering, like how could we have persuaded them, or is it just, I'm so apathetic, I don't?
We're
I could have looked at it more like that wasn't the reason for or against.
Yeah, we're just like, yeah, I'm not strong on a yes or no on that. Maybe it really for them does come down to, I wanted to make it so you could see colors there. I think maybe it really does come down to for them, I didn't want to pay $20 a month right now. Or maybe one of the other issues was prominent. You really see a lot of division in some of the others that I have more of an opinion on that. Like maybe some of the others, they were like, we're not the professionals. We don't know, like with the grade bands and things like that. The safety, like I said, of the elementary schools, it was kind of surprising to me that dropped a little bit. 2% less support for elementary schools being unsafe. The overcrowding of the elementary schools, though, gained more support. Like, we really are concerned about that. And now on that one, too, I thought, well, maybe the 23% that are neutral are like, I don't have kids in the elementary schools, or I didn't even know the elementary schools were overcrowded. On the removal of portable classrooms, we really thought, getting rid of portable classrooms is going to get support, but it really gets you 50% of people are worried about that. Something Steve brought up is not all of our schools have portables, so it wouldn't be important to those schools that don't have portables. this is the one where I really thought, what does that mean? Is on this reconfiguration of the grade bands, K5, 6, 8, 9, 12, it feels like we don't have support here, right? Because only 38% said that that was a reason to support the bond, but if you were to split the neutrals and you could convince them of why it's important, you would get a winning vote there. For Keith and I, in this whole discussion, I've really strongly committed myself to the K5, 6, 8, 9, 12 grade bands, which I wasn't sure about before, but it's our responsibility as the people who run academics and collaboration and PLC and know how that works with the testing and the collaboration and purchasing curriculum and all of those things to kind of form an opinion on that. And I think it's really important for kindergarten through 5th grade students to be together. It would make my job really difficult to have 6th grade students down in elementary because of a lot of reasons developmentally, but also because the curriculum strands there are different. It would make it hard for them to get vertical alignment with 5th grade teachers on math because really they're building 6th graders into 8th graders. They don't have similar standards, and so I really became firm on how I felt on that, and I think as far as the 9th grade.
Oh, I'm even more and more and more convinced that 9-12 is academically, socially, extracurricularly, for those that can accelerate, those that need extra. It's just, I was talking to Ben Wiley from CTE. We only get paid funds for grades 9 through 12. So having them all in one building, about put your money all in that area. I mean, there's lots and lots of reasons why 9-12 makes sense. And the only reason that I've ever heard anybody say is because of the 9th grade girls getting dated by the 12th grade boys. That's the only negative. If there's others, okay, but that's the only one I ever hear when people say, and I don't think that is a valid reason in a world where they connect through social media at night, during the day, weekends, and they don't even see that. Obviously, the 9th grade is separate from the high school if we brought them in, right? It's not like they're interacting in every class. So
I think this is an interesting conversation because I just was talking to a friend of mine and she lives in Weaver District and they got a notice that they're dropping, because they're a 10-12, are they 7-9? I don't know what their notice is, but they're dropping some courses from the 9th grade because they can't offer them, so they can only take them in the high school, and people are upset, like, why can't we have it in 9th grade? And it's part of that same thing, like if you were all in the high school, then that wouldn't be an issue, that wouldn't be a problem. And so I think all districts are kind of grappling with some of these things, like the money and the CTE and some of those things that you're required. One of the classes was like Fit for Life, that they are no longer offering in 9th grade.
Foundational class.
And so they have to take it in 10th grade. And so then that's going to, so anyhow, but I know as we were talking, and I didn't share all this with her, but I thought, I understand the reasoning behind why they're dropping all those things because of funding and money and things like that, because you can't support 2 programs and 2 schools and 2 teachers if you don't have so that's why I agree with this 9-12, and I think that is, but I think it's a hard message to sell to.
I've been surprised at how many people have talked about the athletics, because I'm not in secondary, but just how hard that is for it to be their burden to run their kids around for 9th grade athletics. We have a gal in our very own office that's going at 5 in the morning, comes to work, runs back, goes in the middle of the day. I mean, that's a lot. So anyway, pretty surprising here on the intermediate schools becoming elementary schools, 35%. And as we kind of talked about that, and it didn't pass, there was this sense of, I wasn't sure how I felt about an 1,100-1,200 student school. There's some complications with Golden Spike being so big. And the principal, assistant principal, intern turning over all of the time, and just the size of the school, and the parents feeling like they have the support despite the fact that the principal is doing all they really can to support the families. It feels really big for an elementary school, and I know Keith had mentioned being concerned about 1,100-1,600 student middle schools, and maybe that's part of why parents didn't like the 6th grade at the middle school. So we talked a lot about that. Providing air conditioning had almost as much support as any other thing. So that was really, parents want that. That's more concerning to them than the safety concern, because guess that's every
It's
day our
interesting
kids
too,
are taught.
because 70% of our schools already have it. It's not
Yeah.
like, it's not like there's a bunch
And
out
it's
there.
just a few weeks on
Two or
either
three,
end.
yeah.
6 weeks maybe.
The only concern that had more support than that was the elementary schools being overcrowded. Not the safety of the elementary or middle school and not any of the others, so interesting. Okay,
Well, that one though, overcrowding is affecting every elementary school,
Yeah.
whereas the safety is only what they heard at
2 or 3 elementary
So
schools.
it probably is
That
any
is- that's a
parents
good
that
point, yeah.
would have responded to that one from an already safe school would
Yeah.
have been
All-
that concerned.
All people in elementary think that's concerning. People in middle school and high school maybe aren't worried about that, right? Okay. And then anyone in the school without AC, then some of our people who are just like, it doesn't matter, we didn't have it, but anyway. Okay. So then this section was just let us know which factors you'd like the school board to include when creating a future bond proposal. We really tried to put it all on there. So we tried to ask a lot of questions. So the cost, of course, 88% of our voters said, please consider the cost. Funny that 38% or whatever thought the cost was okay before, but we could get more support by considering the cost of what we're proposing. 68% of them would like us to purchase land ahead of time and know where we would put new buildings. 57% said get the architectural renderings for the future buildings and know what the buildings will look like. Additional athletic facilities, main indoor gym with seating for 25 plus 100, and the indoor practice facility at Box Elder High School. So again, while this one's split, if you divide up the people that are neutral and 17% of them went positive and 17 went negative, we'd be a 50-50 split on that. This is not one of the ones that I looked at north end, south end, but we could on this to see what the support was north end, south end. If you want to know that, I can dig into it. It takes a few 15-20 minutes, so I just didn't do it for every question. I thought we'd see which ones we were interested in. They said, we would like to know, what are you going to do with the middle school and the auditorium, the middle school gym and the auditorium, because the middle school gym is newer. And 66% would like us to have parent representatives earlier on in the process. So this is one Keith threw out there kind of last minute, like for smaller middle schools, because he was concerned about the size of the middle schools, and that got us thinking.
I'll tell you where this is at, and it'll be part of the third bullet, or the 6 o'clock timeline, but we didn't give any context. The context here was for smaller middle schools, almost implying we're going to build 4 now instead of 2. So I've got some that's a little teaser
Would need to clear
for
that.
what we're going to do here at 6 o'clock. But we had no guidance. It was just what do you think about 4 smaller middle schools?
And when he said that, I looked at him like, are you kidding me? 700 to 800 student middle schools when Golden Spike's 1,000 students? What? I want smaller schools, and you're gonna have smaller schools anyway. So we kind of got some thoughts floating.
Well, these
there.
guys are downstairs, so they're down here huddling, and then one day they come walking into my office and shut the door. That doesn't happen all the time.
When we decided to go for bond, I said, we need to do it because we're gonna keep having this same plan until people tell us this is not the plan they want.
Yeah.
And then we can see a new plan, and we couldn't see any new ideas until people said no, so.
Yeah.
So yeah, the 4 smaller middle schools. This one, I did break up by north end, south end to see if there was more. Because this is another one we've talked about. Do we do a 3rd high school and a 3rd middle school in Honeyville or Bear River City? It's really surprising to Steve and Keith that there's 41% that are neutral that could be swayed one way or the other. That it's not more of a no. So I checked north end, south end on this. It was the same. It was off by 2%. They were like one end or the other end of the district completely against that idea.
Or I guess it doesn't show you Honeyville. Was it all Honeyville, the river people that said yes? Is that right?
I can look at that, yeah, send me the.
See where we've got that kind of gray line through the middle of there to tell you where they go
And
north or
what I
they go
can
south.
do is, the way that I set it up was, I I put the schools that, or the towns that go to the north end or the towns that go to the south end, but I could absolutely look at just across the center there, the schools that, the people that it would include versus the rest. And we can, that was kind of the idea between sending this out on the thread, and then I'll see what questions they have, and we'll keep digging and see.
I don't want it to take like a ton of more time.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if
Yeah.
they're the only ones that care, or
This one, we only threw on there because it's a consideration we were looking at as far as maybe with Foothill saying, well, let's send some of the K1 over there. We have K1 Willard and,
Over to Foothill.
yeah, we have 2nd through 5th at Perry, so 3 miles. So.
When I saw this, I was like, what?
I mean, it was just like, well, we have that in our district.
We already have it.
Part of it is
Yeah.
Willard doesn't want to give it up. Willard Perry, they like it. So if we were to combine them all, and at some point, I'd like all our elementary schools. It's tough when there's a difference. So let's see, do they want to go that way? Because again, the grade bands do go K2 curriculum and 3-5 curriculum. So we have 2 different curriculums in a building, but at least it's the whole grade band. So that was just to see. All right, now this is where we said click and drag, and I thought this was going to be so hard to organize, but I was so shocked by the majority at first, and then the majority in second, and the majority in third, and how that looked. So for immediate solutions, for when we designed this and sent it out, we were thinking January, February, create a plan to take the impact off of the elementary schools. I don't want to move that fast. I want to have stakeholders and think it through and more input. And anyway, so here we go. Reopen Foothill Elementary in Brigham. 1,904 put that in their first or second choice, but 1,284 had that in their first choice. And you can see how that's less appealing as the 5th or 6th choice. A lot of people want us to reopen that. Although it was built in 1962, and we're telling everyone Lakeview and North Park were built in 1962 and they're not safe. Most people think that we should be opening it and using it.
can you, okay, would that only help Discovery Boundary? Is that the plan? Or is it a lot of the people around Foothill that are like, yes, please reopen that school?
We'd have to reboundary and really
We
look
talked through that.
talk about a demographer and
The easiest choice would be, let's move some of the Korean students in and let's move K1 from Discovery and K1 from Lakeview is the first thought we came up with. Because we have a K1 school, Willard, right?
And it's one of our highest scoring K1s in the district.
Yep.
I mean, if you compare it with the
It
other.
is. Well, in the state. They are
state.
the highest scoring school in the entire state. Willard Elementary is. And it's because they can focus on those 2 grades. And obviously, you know, some SES situation there with the socioeconomic status. But anyway, I'll try to be more brief. But we looked at that. We considered moving K1 from Discovery and Lakeview as the least impactful. We talked about maybe busing the furthest kids from Lakeview over there. That's pretty disruptive to do this short term. I want a stakeholder group. There's also Logan Cash was using a demographer to look at all of their schools and say, where should you be sending kids? And so with our future plan, we'll get into that in a minute, but the easiest thing would be K1. That comes with a lot of problems. It would open up so many classrooms between those 2 schools that all those portables could then go to the north end to be used. And as we went through this, parents weren't against realigning boundaries, second choice. Third choice.
That one blows my mind.
Additional portables. First, open Foothill. Second, realign boundaries, which we told them we would have to realign boundaries and people would have to move. And then third, additional portables. So that's the hard thing about this, Vivi, you can't turn it down. Those 3 things that you think people wouldn't want, and there would be a lot of complaints people are okay with. And that would put portables on most of our elementary schools. After you've had portables at all of your schools for a while, a bond might pass.
But in the previous part, though, like the portables was not an issue for lots of people.
50% cared and 50% didn't.
And I think there is some perception that it's classroom, it's space, and it's cheap. And it works, so, I mean, less expensive.
Yeah.
I don't know, but like, you know what I mean? I think there is that perception.
Initially less expensive,
Yeah.
and they cost a lot to maintain and run, and utilities, and
Sure.
they're kind of expensive to buy. Okay, so the next thing, the fourth choice was increased class sizes, and the numbers we put out there for elementary was 32 in the younger grades and 37 in the upper grades, and so that was fourth choice. And then the fifth was year-round school with rotating schedules for groups of students. When this survey went out, I had a lot of people say, did anyone even vote for that? 323 people thought that was the best choice, was year-round school. And then the last one was the AM or PM for groups of students, so we come in the morning.
I'll take the blame on that. I thought I'd just throw it out for fun.
Brian read that, he's like, what?
I had people say, did anyone vote for that? And I said, 86 people put it as their first two choices. So I don't know if they work the night shift and they like the idea of us watching their kids.
About 50 years ago, Bear Lake School District did that. Because they tried to pass a bond, they did that, they passed the bond the next time.
And that's part of why we put it on there too. Like, people say, what are our options? Those are the only options we could think of. If you could think of something else, let us know. We had a comment section and there wasn't anything original. I did put this on here and the voting precincts, just so you would kind of have an idea. I thought it was, I put red stars by anything less than 30%, green stars by anything above 40%. None of the precincts were in favor of the bond at a 50%. Lakeview was 28%, right where Lakeview is at. Not all of the voting precincts that go into Lakeview, but pretty low around there, probably socioeconomic, right? I just thought it was interesting. What did the people right by the school think? And then our outlying cities are mostly below that 30%. Honeyville showed this as a precinct, but there was no vote, so I don't know, I left it on there.
I was curious, like I had the thought of the ones that were very against, or, well, besides Willard, are a lot of agriculture.
More property.
And I know, like, from some of the conversations I had with some family members, what they came to me and they're like, it's gonna cost us $60 more per acre. And I'm like, no! Did you look at the chart?
Yeah.
And so I think they just didn't, a lot of them maybe just didn't understand. Because they said to me, we were told it's going to cost us $60 more per acre a year. No, that's way
And I think
more.
that's some misinformation
Yeah.
that gets out there and then somebody tries to promote it, so.
This is those other outlying areas. The highest one in the whole district was that 42% at Garland East, which again, still 8.5% away from winning it. And North Park actually had where North Park resides, not everyone who attends there.
Which one would be
33.
North Park?
This one right here, Tree Mountain 1.
Okay.
And that is the end of this portion, and then we will talk about the 3-year plan, and I'll pull that up here.
Tremont and West as well, because they're still mad about they were supposed to get a school, right?
Probably.
So my old coach got kind of back into my, if you lose a game, how do you win the next game? If you lose a game, what did we do well, what did we not? And so as soon as we saw the result, my mind just starts going with what's plan B, because everybody said, what is plan B? And I had some thoughts, but I certainly hadn't, got into them. So I'm driving from Salt Lake in November from a meeting. I'm driving down, and then I have this idea, because every time it came out of my mouth, we're going to build a new Box Elder Middle School that's going to be, if it's built for growth, 1,800 students. And when I said that, I went, and it wasn't a lot of fun being the middle school principal with 1,050. And now we're going to have an 1,800 middle school. And that's a big school for 6, 7, 8 kids that are all growing through. That's a big number. So anyway, I didn't know exactly how to work it. We started talking with Heidi Jo. We started getting this idea. And so
We talked about 5th, 6th in the intermediate schools, and that's when we kind of, what are we committed to?
Yeah.
We're committed to what's best for teachers instructionally, educationally, what's going to.
So the bond had a lot of things in it that you could, besides economics. I don't like 9th grade at the high school. I don't like a middle school being 1,800. You don't even know where the property's going to be. You haven't made a design. I don't like 6th grade with the middle school. Those 8th graders they should just put things on their head because everybody hates them.
There were so many people that said that in meetings,
Anyway,
like 8th graders.
but, and then there were people that said, I don't like the intermediate schools becoming elementary schools. They're way, way, way too big. So in other words, all of a sudden, we have so many variables in addition to economics that it's like, we gave them way too many choices to vote no. Like, let's limit a few things. So through all of this discussion, we feel very committed that a K-5, 6-8, 9-12 model needs to go. So hold off on...
Needs to go forward.
Needs to go forward, not needs to go.
Yeah, there you go.
Needs to go forward. We're not going to, I'm going to kind of stay away from elementary for just a second, because rebounding, more portables, I mean, how they open up Foothill, all those things might have to be in play, but stay with me for just a few minutes. I believe that we keep being told, isn't there any other money? Can't you save the money? And the reality is we know how long it took for us. It took us 14 years to save $62 million to build all these buildings we've built since 2012. So how do you do it? How do you do it? Well, whether this is a right or wrong feeling, truth and taxation. So stay with me on this. We go to truth and taxation, raise our levy so that we can have capital money. We estimate roughly $6 million we could generate. Do a lease revenue bond and add 9th grade classrooms. Move the 9th grade over. Okay, now, that then is a variable that takes a whole bunch of people. I mean, frankly, it's 4 out of 7. Obviously, we've got to work through all your questions. But the idea is we go to truth and taxation. For this purpose, what we can afford to move 9th grade over. Now, this is where it got a little crazy. Just stay with me, and then I'll let you ask your question. I didn't like the idea of big middle schools. I didn't like the idea that we weren't committed to land and what it's going to look like, etc. What are you going to do with Box Elder Middle School's brand new 12-year-old gym? And what are you going to do with that auditorium? So here's this idea. If we can move the 9th grade over, now this is the weird thing. Turn ACYI and Box Elder Middle School, Harris and Bear River Middle School into 6-8 middle schools. So now, we now go to a 6-8 model with our existing buildings. Everybody's saying, are you going to ever promote for growth? Are you ever going to plan for growth? Well, all of a sudden, if we have 6 through 8, Young and Box Elder Middle School have roughly 800 kids in it. If you take 350 kids out of Box Elder Middle School, 350, although it's an old building, it could survive a little bit. It could just survive by just taking so many bodies out of the hallways. It could survive. ACYI, they have 6, 7, we'll add some 8th graders. The idea being, and again, a demographer would help us with this, but you could take Willard Perry, so 3 Mile Creek, Lakeview, and maybe some of Century, I don't know. They go to ACYI. It'll have to be called a different school, but it would be a 6-8 school. Then you would take Golden Spike, Discovery, Honeyville, I don't know exactly all that, and that would feed into the Box Elder Middle School. And so now we have a K-5 model. All the schools are staying the same. They're still overcrowded. We'll deal with that. But now we have 9th grade over, 6 through 8 at 2 schools. Thinking about Harris Intermediate and Bear River Middle become a 6-8 school. McKinley and North Park can feed Harris along with the Western School, Snowville. Garland and Fielding can feed into the Bear River Middle School. Now, that right there, according to our plan, if we went to truth and taxation this year, and we did our planning of our design planning, etc., for the 9th grade schools, went out to bid November of this year, according to a former company, DWA, they think they could get it built so that schools could be open fall of 2027.
And cheaper.
And cheaper than what the numbers were floating. Now, obviously, everybody's got to go to bid and all of that. So think about this, we're in 25, 26, 27. It could be built, and we could have 9th grade at the 2 high schools. We could have 6, 8 at these 4 middle schools.
Which, the nice thing is you'd have 2, 3, 4 elementaries feeding into a middle school, and then 2 middle schools feeding into the high school. So you're not, right now we bring all the kids together at intermediate school from the whole north end.
And then they just roll.
And then they go to middle school and high school. They go to school for the next 6 years with all those kids. We can't split them up. They don't have school choice. We could do school choice and let them move across the district, move to a different school if it's not working. They get a fresh group of kids at the high school, so we're not introduced to everyone in the whole north end of the district.
Keith, would you just, I don't think you ever said the actual, what do you think, if we were in today's numbers, what would Box Elder Middle School be? Would it be 850?
It'd be about, well, right now, it's about 1,600 in 6, 7, 8.
Okay.
So we're talking about 800 in each school. Hey, ACYI can hold 1,100. Box Elder Middle School obviously can hold 1,150 because that's what it is.
So question,
Be taking a grade out of
You
that
take the 9th grade out.
1,600.
right, that's
Exactly.
take the 9th grade out. So this would all be done, like, if I understand what you're saying correctly, if we went with this way, all the construction, everything's done, and then everybody start at the same time.
Yep.
9th grade start,
Yep.
and the middle school split.
So in
And
the
so
fall
how
of
much
27.
how much do they anticipate, because you say we can raise $6 million in
Yeah, a
truth
year.
and taxation a year, well, that's only 12, 13, 14, 18 million in 3 years.
Originally,
Well, but that's a payment for the
Lease revenue.
lease revenue bond.
Oh, lease revenue,
That's
originally
a
the
payment for that.
architects told us that it would be about 60 million, but when we talked to our general construction manager yesterday, he was like, those numbers are very liberal, he called them, right? He said those
And
were
that's Wayne
added to
Anderson,
from when he gave the number to
who's
Dave
currently
Cox.
building the 2 middle schools in cash. He said numbers are really coming in really good right now.
So maybe 50,
Explain
55.
the lease revenue bond, how that would work.
Yeah,
Like Golden-
kind of like Golden Spike, we took half, we put $15,000 in capital.
50 million.
Or 15.
I do it.
15,000, it's nice. 15 million of capital, and then we took 15 million and had a lease revenue bond. Obviously, Dave was involved with that, Neil would be part of that. Do you want to speak to that a
So
little
the
bit?
lease revenue bond, you're bonding for future payments received through tax collections, but you get the money up front. So a 20-year bond, you're paying, numbers, for example, on $220 million bond we wanted to do, is about $15 million in debt service a year for 20 years, including interest and payback. So it's a similar model. You want to borrow 60, you take it out for 20 years, figure out what the payments are, and you raise enough revenue to cover those payments in addition to what we already collect.
But it's a lower bond amount that we don't have to put to voters, we can just.
Right, as long as we're on.
This doesn't go to the voters.
It's
Lease
just like
revenue.
getting.
This-
I mean, truth and taxation,
This is the board's decision.
all of you, but maybe one have gone through this, and there's going to be people coming in, so, sorry, Karen.
I was going to say, so, and you said to raise the levy,
Mhm.
and that would get us the first 6 million, then we would need to raise more money
Well, no, that's year.
It would just
That's
stay
6 million. The taxes go
per
up
year.
per year.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Is that, would that cover the lease revenue bond, or would we?
Yeah, we
need to
looked at
do
numbers,
additional-
so for example, it was about $20 per month on an average residential home on the $500,000 value home. That would generate enough revenue to have supported the $220 million bond. We don't need that much. We could go $5 a month on average home value and still raise the amount of money we needed for $60 million lease revenue bond, raise that money.
So we would need to keep that in place for how long?
Until.
About 20, 18 to 20 is not what you said,
18
Neil?
to 20.
Years.
Then when we go to bond again in 5 years, whenever that is, it's about, should we rebuild this building? Should we add on to this building instead of, should we move these schools here? Should we, should we replace the whole grade band situation? Instead, it's just,
So if,
Do you have an
if we
appetite
did
to
this
build it?
model of getting the
Yeah.
lease revenue bond, moving the 9th grade over, splitting ACYI, Box Elder Middle, Harris, and Bear River Middle into 4 middle schools, renaming them. If we did that, Now when we go to bond, and whether that's fall of 27, fall of 29, fall of 28, or whenever the board decides we're ready to go. As you remember, our old bond comes off the 29. It comes off in 29. So they were kind of like, you mean our other one's still on? So this would allow us to get a lot of the variables out of the way, because I don't personally think that it's everybody's business to determine how we're going to educate our kids and what structure we have when we know that the guidance of K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12 is good for kids. And it's, so really then, well, we'll then eventually, whenever this is, we'll say, well, let's go to bond. Okay, let's just say fall of 29. Let's go to bond. Well, then what we're going to say is this: we need a new Box Elder Middle School, and we're going to build it on site. That land is already purchased. And we keep the gym, which at that point will be 17 years old, but we keep that gym. That will help us offset some stuff. And apparently people don't care about unreinforced masonry. So we'll keep the auditorium. And by the way, when the school is 800 or 900, you can go 2 assemblies and actually go into the middle school. Right now it's 1125 or 1150, and you can't get everybody into 2 assemblies. You're hoping that people are gone, or you have to go 3 assemblies. But that allows us to keep an auditorium. It allows us to keep, and really for the community, if we had a fine arts, the ACYI middle school could go over for their concert because or they could go to the high school. You wouldn't necessarily need to build one there. Does that make sense? Yeah. Then on the other end, oh, and by the way, Lakeview's got to be rebuilt, right? Remember, that's why we did this. So you could either build it on Lakeview's property. It's not ideal, but you could build it to the south, or you could build it on the property we already own, which is west of ACYI, and that's our property, so you could build Lakeview there. Let's go up north. Possibly. These are all, but they were worried about what property you're building on. We've already identified property, and you could say this is what it's going to look like. You go up north, now we're talking North Park. You could build it to the
West.
north, or whoever owns that other empty lot, maybe we say, we got to buy that. And you build North Park to the south. Or go to McDonald's. Build out there. We could build it there if that was a viable option. We own that property. The only thing I personally think that Bear River Middle, because it would have Garland and Fielding in it, it feels to me that that should be built off-site, a little more centrally located to those 2 schools. I don't know where that would be. East Garland, they tend to vote yes. Let's go to East Garland and build a middle school that would have those 2 schools coming in. So now, as we look at this plan, we don't have an 1800 middle school at Box Elder Middle School. We don't have a 1300 middle school at Bear River Middle School. We actually have partner schools.
And we don't have 2 elementary schools that are 12 and 14.
We don't have elementary schools that are into 1200, which they were not liking that.
We didn't.
It does.
We liked that it took a lot of impact off of a lot of schools, but it makes a big school.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Here? Are the intermediate schools, as they are now, have all the facilities they need for middle schools?
Yes, and actually
all
much
the
better than
CTE,
elementary, because we went through there, we're like, what would we use the shop
Yeah.
for? How would we redo the locker rooms? That would be preschool. I mean,
CTE is not funded.
a lot less
in
cost.
8th grade.
That's 8th grade.
So a lot of the things that are in the current middle school are because of 9th grade.
Correct.
It would be a lot less cost.
Pottery is not an 8th grade
It's not
class.
an 8th grade class.
Okay.
But they do have art rooms there that have the big.
There are 8th
working
graders that
tables
take
they can
pottery
do that.
because the 9th grade, it is a curriculum class. Same with woods. Although we have schools up north in the high school that doesn't have woods.
So the cost is just the 9th grade. We don't have to
So
put
the
any
cost is
in
the
middle
9th
school.
grade through truth and taxation.
We do need to kind of look at the boundaries and start thinking about what do we do? Do we build onto Fielding with the plan that we have there? Do we, do we build onto Discovery with the land that we have there, which is why I would like to look at a demographer before we say, let's open up Foothill and put some people there. Maybe we should have the whole district assessed for what our buildings look like, where our roads and lines are, where should we send kids, knowing this is our 3 to 5 year plan? Because it would also feed into where will kids go to their middle schools? Instead of us just saying, let's send K1 from Discovery and some of Corinne and Lakeview all over there, and let's have someone look at it. So part of what we wanted to ask today is if it would be okay for Corey to start looking at a construction crew and then just start thinking about the demographer, right? A construction architect, RFP, sorry, yeah, and
So
so we could get moving forward with it.
if we did that, if we did this idea of truth and taxation, build the 9th grade, split the 2 middle schools, or intermediate middle schools into middle schools, and then whenever the board says, we're gonna survive, we still gotta deal with some elementary stuff, but I don't think you can do that with new build. Maybe, I don't know. But the reality is, right now elementary schools are 26 million-ish. He kind of gave us a ish, 26 million.
Now that's the smaller ones than Golden Spike.
Yeah, we're not talking about a Golden Spike holding 9 or 1,000. We're talking Lakeview and North Park would be smaller schools.
750, I think he said.
The middle schools, because we're not building 1,800 student population. What they heard was the 2 middle schools that are 3 grades in cash, they build them for $50 million for 1,200 students. We don't even need that big. We're just really looking for something that's around 1,000. That'd give us a couple of hundred students buffer for future growth. If you do the math, 50, 50, 26, 26, whenever we decide to go to bond, now we're at 152. And our old bond is off. But yes, we went up on truth and taxation. No one can deny that. But the idea would be, now you have a model going forward that is going to bite a little, and that's what they asked for. Is there anything? We take away almost every variable that they could get bugged by because it's the right thing to do, not because it's, you know what I mean? Let's give everybody a vote. I appreciate all that, but what you guys do each and every month and what we do each and every day and what we study and what we learn, I do believe it's the right thing to do. Then
The safety of the middle schools too.
Oh.
I felt like as soon as we could get the middle school split, they'd automatically become more safe. Box Elder and Bear River.
For behavior
are
type
not so
safety.
proud
So
of
like
that.
Young right now is over
In that
1,000.
aspect.
To have 200 kids out of that school. Box Elder Middle School is 1,150. To all of a sudden be down to 800. That creates a safer place, even if we never win a bond the rest of our life. Do you know what I'm saying? Even if no one ever votes yes again, we have now bought us some time. We've got to the right educational experience. But it will require this wonderful board to vote yes and to have 12 to whatever, 25.
My first reaction was,
How much would it to cost to build the wing on the 9th grade wing? How much?
What they're saying right now is between $60 and $66 million.
for both ends.
For both ends.
Well, that's no, it did. That's what Cox gave us over the summer, but when we spoke
Yeah,
to the construction
maybe
manager
more into
yesterday,
the
he said
50.
he added money to that. He felt like he'd be more 50.
So the bottom line number is?
Well, approximately probably 55 million.
Well, while we're doing it, we
both.
probably need to find out what AC would be because there was such an overwhelming.
And we didn't,
and that's only going to be
And Karen, we
million or
didn't
two.
put
But
AC
it included
in.
that.
just to finish up that AC.
It does both, so like
27 million.
But just so you know, Box Elder High already
Oh, yeah,
has
yeah,
AC.
yes.
Yeah.
So whatever we build would put AC. Bear River High, not everything has AC. So we'd have to decide how much. Is the new spot going to get AC or whatever?
Instead of the big Bear Center, or the big East Center, it was the smaller one. Instead of adding on to the Bear Center, it was just.
Well, I think, I'm glad we went out